Hello everyone. The novel I'm bringing you today has a plot so tight it takes your breath away. Beneath the glory of the werewolf nobility, there are undercurrents. The protagonists have to deal with external supernatural threats as well as internal struggles over the air. The emergence of that mysterious creature makes the situation worse. How will they choose? Where will they go? Let's uncover the mystery right now. Chapter 31. Their heads snapped up at my words. The tension in the room palpable. "She's not human," Atlas and Cassie Ann said simultaneously, their voices laced with concern. "She's a lupine." I leaned back in my chair, my eyes scanning the results before me. According to these tests, she has the same genetic make-up as a human. I informed them candidly, my tone clinical and detached. Atlas' body relaxed fractionally, his protective instincts momentarily subdued. "We all did at one point," he explained, running a hand through his hair. "That's what makes it so easy for us to blend in the human world as kids if we needed to. Our DNA doesn't really change until we shift for the first time." Cassie Ann shook his head, his analytical mind working overtime. "That doesn't explain the bruises," he countered, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Even though we start out with human DNA, we still have the healing properties of wolves intertwined within our cells." Alice's eyes widened as realization dawned. "Then that means she shouldn't have any bruises." I finished for him, my voice grave. "She shouldn't even be in pain or sleeping as much as she does after defense class." Atlas leaned forward anxiously, his gaze darting between Cassie Ann and me. "It should go away after she shifts, right?" he asked, his voice tinged with hope. "Right." I took a deep breath, preparing to deliver the news. "She doesn't have a wolf," I started, but Cassie Ann cut me off sharply. "We don't know that," he interjected, his tone firm. "Just like we don't know what the effects are for a shifter who's been away from her pack for 19 years. I softened my voice, trying to ease the tension. "She doesn't have a wolf, Cass," I said gently. "And that's okay. She has 3 of them, alphas no less, at her beck and call whenever she needs them. However, there's the little fact that if she gets hurt, there's a chance she could get seriously injured. Or worse." Atlas jumped up from his seat, his protective instincts flaring. "Fuck that," he growled, his eyes flashing with determination. "Pull her out of that class now." Cassie Ann shook his head, ever the voice of reason. "She needs it," he argued. "It helps her build muscle and learn technique, something the other students are starting to notice that she is seriously lacking." Atlas growled, his body tense with frustration. "If they think they won't do anything to her unless they're 100% sure she can't defend herself," I cut him off, "and they will only strike if they know they have at least some kind of consent from at least one alpha. My pack would never," Atlas barked, "to kill them before they'd even tried. Neither would mine." Cass sent him a pointed look, "But there is more than the 3 alphas sitting in this room." Their eyes shifted to mine and I raised a brow. "If you think that, we know you wouldn't hurt Nova," Atlas said, rolling his eyes, "but we also know that you don't have 100% control over your pack yet." "I have enough control to keep my pack in line," I snapped. "Tier only thinks he's in control, which is exactly what I want him to think." "You haven't swayed your elders yet," Mix Cass said softly, kitty swimming in his eyes. "They still favor TR as much as an ass he is, because they claim that he has something you don't. I don't know why they have any input," Atlas added, "and it's obvious why they side with TR." I cocked my head to the side in a go-on gesture. "A Fenrir clan was once considered the most ruthless wolves in history," he said. "They killed and pillaged first and asked questions later. That the generation the elders come from. They like TR so much because he's a ruthless motherfucker who doesn't give 2 shits about anyone but himself. He'll kill anyone who stands in his way, which is exactly what the elders want." I raised a brow. "I don't think I could be like him." They both shot me sad looks. "Nonix Y," Atlas punched my shoulder in a brotherly type gesture. "You're too much like your ma." "Which isn't a bad thing," Ass said quickly, seeing me emotion change quickly on my face. "That's what makes you different from your father. That's the one thing that has all the other alphas and pack members respecting you." I cleared my throat, avoiding their eyes and cursing myself for having my mother's soft heart. Anyways, Atlas redirected thankfully the topic back at hand. You think Fowl would give them the go-ahead? She hates the loopiness, I reminded him. My thoughts elsewhere, especially Nova for some reason. While she wouldn't outright agree to her pack members going after Nova, I wouldn't put it past her to turn a blind eye if her pack was planning on doing something. Kyoto wouldn't allow it, Atlas said. Shaking his head, he might be a giant douche with a stick up his ass, but at least Teichi's the honorable one. Kyoto isn't the real Fowl heir, Cass reminded him. So worse on the other hand. Don't even say it out loud. I sent him a sharp look. If she ever found out that she was the real Fowl heir, the only Fowl heir, our entire lives would be ruined. Nova, I swear to God something was up with the 3 Stooges I lived with because they were treating me differently. Not so different that it was completely out of character for them, but enough of a difference that I noticed their change right away. The little things like Atlas piling more food onto my plate than usual, or Cassian pulling out my chair and asking me if I needed anything every 5 minutes. Even Phoenix was joining us at breakfast for once, his eyes lingering on me every few seconds. After the 10th round of Atlas piling even more food onto my plate, and Cassian's checks, I sighed. Okay, out with it. I placed my utensils down gently on the table, looking at each of them in the eyes. What's wrong? All 3 of them blinked at me a few times before simultaneously saying nothing's wrong. Then why are you treating me like glass? Phoenix rolled his eyes. Just because we're nice to you for one day doesn't mean something's wrong. I narrowed my eyes at him as they fused. That right? Alice avoided my eyes while Cassian winced, his eyes subconsciously flickering down to my bruised arms. I shifted in my seat, pulling down the blazer to cover my black and blue arms. Is that what this is about? I huffed, not liking this vulnerable feeling in my chest. They're just bruises. They'll heal. You're right, Phoenix said, his voice serious and kind. They will heal, but we need to make sure you don't suffer from any more until they do. How are you planning on that happening? I raised a brow, considering I had coach's class this afternoon. Actually, Atlas started, but then winced when my head snapped over to where he was sitting. What did you 3 do? We pulled you from class. What? My eyes. Why? Because you need to heal, Phoenix answered seriously, and we can't have the other packs noticing those bruises. I can't miss his class. You hate that class. Atlas wrinkled his nose. Why would you want to voluntarily attend a class you hate if we're giving you an out? Because I need those skills. Why? I blinked at Phoenix. What do you mean, why? You're the last living Lupine heir. He said you could have thousands of warriors fight any battle you want them to with the snap of your fingers. I don't want anyone fighting my battles, I said honestly, wincing at the thought of someone getting hurt. Or worse, dying because of me, and not worth it. You're worth 10,000 soldiers, Phoenix snorted, all of which who would gladly lay their lives down for yours. I need the skills. I shook my head. I need to be able to defend myself. Atlas cocked his head to the side. Why are you so adamant about coach's class? I thought you hated it. I hate the exercise part, I grumbled. I don't hate the self-defense portion. I think there's been some miscommunication somewhere. Phoenix shook his head. We're pulling you from coach's class. I got that part. Einstein, I interrupted him. He continued on, ignoring my little quip, but what we're not doing is taking away his lessons. What do you mean? I paused, so confused right now. You're still going to be able to learn the self-defense portion of Calhoun's class. Ow. A tutor. A tutor, I said slowly. And who would that be? Cass sucked in a sharp breath as Atlas let out a slow exhale. The best tutor out there, Phoenix smirked, the only one who got a perfect score in his class. My eyes slid to Atlas, but he only shook his head. I passed the class but wasn't even near the top. My eyes slid to Cassian next, but he just shook his head. If you 2 weren't. My eyes wide, and as the realization set in, shit. Don't be like that, Princess, Phoenix scooed. The biggest grin I've ever seen gracing his face. You and I are going to have so much fun with each other. I gaped at him. They're going to kill each other, Cass muttered to himself. But oh, what fun it'll be to watch Atlas. A teasing light entering his eyes, and I can't wait to see who ends up winning in the end. Chapter 13. Nova. I was at my desk, the one closest to the window, looking at the darkening sky when I felt a presence take the seat next to me. When I looked over and found the familiar face staring back at me in amusement, I nearly sagged in relief. Charlie, I beamed at him. I didn't know we shared this class. We didn't until an hour ago, he grinned, pulling out a notebook and pencil case. Turns out I'm behind in the competition and need to catch up. What competition? The one for valedictorian. He said it's between me and one other person who. His lips pursed, but I didn't miss the way his eyes drifted to the guy from our defense class, the one that currently sat rigidly in his seat a few rows down. Oh, I said, clicking my pen twice as I thought about my next word to get the story behind you two. There's nothing to tell, Charlie said softly, ripping his eyes from the guy and focusing on the whiteboard. His jaw clenched tightly as he continued to look straight ahead. It sure doesn't seem like nothing to me, I said, my tone just as soft. It looks like you two have history. He looked away. He has a history with a misconstrued past. Charlie said something he made very clear that he wants nothing to do with anymore. People have regrets, I murmured as the teacher walked into class. People also say things they don't mean in the heat of the moment. He glanced at me. I never believed in that saying. Why not? The angered docent makes some own's words venomous, he said. The anger just gives them the nerve to say what they couldn't before. I blinked at him. I didn't know you were a philosopher. He cracked a smile, releasing the small tension that arose at the touchy subject. I'm a man of many talents, Sir Lupine. He nudged my shoulder. Stick around and maybe you'll end up learning a thing or two. Maybe, I snorted. Maybe not. All right, class, the professor cleared his throat. Let's begin. My next class was nearly enjoyable as the one I shared with Charlie, and considering this class was the equivalent to a human world history course, I was quite literally bored out of my mind. The professor just read off of his slides word for word, and since I had a copy of them, it was like I was basically teaching myself at this point, something I could gladly do in the comfort of my own room, surrounded by a plethora of snacks and my dog. I was about to zone out completely when one sentence stood out from the rest, which had my gaze swinging towards PowerPoint. The equinox is considered one of the greatest accomplishments the Light-Fi have ever crafted, Professor W.Y.N. Chester said, but not only keeps out the dark Phi and their creatures of the night, but also creates balance between the four seasonal kingdoms. How so? My question came out so fast that it not only startled the other students but also startled the professor. He cleared his throat. Pardon. How does a big barrier that cuts them off from the rest of the world create balance? Giggles and scoffs sounded throughout the whole classroom. The professor leaned back on the edge of his desk within the equinox. The kings and queen of the seasonal realm are at an equal advantage, he said. One does not have more or less power than the other. They all have the same amount. How? I sat forward in my seat. I thought there were no limits when it came to the Phi power. It was a sacrifice on the Phase part, Professor W.Y.N. Chester explained. Creating the equinox, the one thing that keep the evil away from the good, took a lot of power from the Phi royals. It still does, in fact. In order to keep the equinox indestructible, the royals must act as a conduit and have their powers funneled into the shield at a constant rate. I reared my head back. If that's the case, then why did the Phi build the equinox then? I asked. If it's funneling so much of their powers, then why do they continue to keep it around? Murmurs of "what a stupid question" or "someone didn't brush up on her history" sounded throughout the class. Because of the dark fight, as someone whispered. I ignored them, choosing to keep my eyes on the professor, who was looking contemplative. I'm not quite sure I understand your question, Ms. Lupine, he said slowly. Can you please explain a bit further? I understand that the equinox was built to keep the dark Phi out, I said, shooting a glare at everyone in the room, but what I don't understand is what the purpose was of locking their own people inside. If the equinox shuts off all portals from the seasonal realm, with no one coming in or out, and takes away their power, why would they willingly choose to keep it? From my understanding, there's been no sightings or attacks from the dark Phi in centuries. Why would any nation keep something they worked so hard to create? The professor countered. Like the humans' Great Wall of China, or the borders around some countries. While the threat isn't present in the moment, that doesn't mean it still doesn't exist. While there's been no sightings doesn't mean the dark Phi still aren't out there. But to keep themselves in that position, I shook my head. What would they gain by keeping it up? Even if the dark Phi did come back, there could be other solutions they can use now instead of the limited options they have centuries ago. Translation: what were the Phi trying to hide? While we don't know the motives behind the Phase ways, there have been speculations behind why the equinox still stands. And, before he could answer my question, a familiar hand shot up, making me glare at the back of the red hare's head. Professor W.Y.N. Chester. I think we're getting a little off topic here, Holly O'Hare. One of Sawer's friends and sidekick. Irritating voice rang out. If Nova wants to learn more about the Phi and the equinox, I think she should do so on her own time, so it doesn't take away from the rest of our studies. She shot me a smug look, or maybe she could go back a couple of grades and learn her own history first before trying to understand another factions. Someone should go back to the salon and learn how long she should wait before her next touch-up. I grumbled. Your fried roots are showing. She gasped while everyone else sputtered out laughs. Shit. I forgot about the wolf hearing. Or did I? It wasn't that funny. She snapped at her. The boy right next to her. She's not a fucking comedian. She's not wrong though. Someone snickered, which had the class laughing even harder. Less. I thought you said you were a natural redhead. Her face turned betrayed, matching her fake hair, and she growled in outrage. I am. Not from where we're sitting. The person said. Who would have knew? You should have another voice. Giggled. You dated her for 3 months. When I dated her, everything matched. If possible. Holly turned an even deeper shade of red. I would have felt bad for her if she was being such a raging bitch. Class. The professor snapped. Let's get back to the topic at hand. He shot me an apologetic look. I'm sorry, Ms. Lupine, but I must get back to today's lesson. If you wish to know more about the equinox, I suggest you ask our librarian. Is it true? I flinched as Jade basically slammed her tray on the table, right next to mine. Is what true? Did you start a fight with Holly O'Hare today in 4th period? She asked, curiosity blazing in her eyes as she took her seat next to me. I heard that you fought with her today. Before I could answer her, another body joined our table, taking my other side. You fought with Holly today. Charlie whistled low. I leave you alone for 2 periods and you decide to act out. Geez, girl. I didn't know you deemed me that bad. I rolled my eyes, reaching for my apple-eared idiot. That maybe he nodded his head, but I didn't hear a denial of a fight in there. Neither did I. Jade sang so. Did you? No, I sighed. Why does everyone assume I'm the one that always starts these fights? Am I that big of an asshole? Their moment of silence had me grinning. I threw a piece of my apple at them. Jade expertly dodged my at it in his mouth like it was a treat. An asshole, no, Charlie answered, digging into what looked like a black bean burger. But you do have a resting bitch face. You know, oh, which you know. You're not the first person to tell me that. I hummed. My best friends tell me that all the time. Ouch. Charlie grabbed his chest like he was in pain. Way to wound my already fragile heart, Nova Lupine. My lips twitched in amusement. It takes a little more than pulling your punches to consider you my best friend, Charles. His eyes widened as his mouth popped open in surprise. How did you? I trained with Phoenix the same time your and co chess class. I smiled at him. I was coming back from the locker room on the other end of the stadium when I saw you take down 3 dudes at once, knocking them out flat. He blushed, turning his head as he munched on his sweet potato fries. Why do you pull your punches, Charlie? I didn't want to hurt you. I believe that I told him honestly, but I don't think that's the entire reason behind your decision. I would have followed the order regardless. He mumbled to himself. Yuri. Different than the others. Who ordered you, Charles? Don't get mad at him. A very familiar voice rang out. He was just doing what I asked of him. Chapter 33. Nova. Don't get mad at him. A very familiar voice rang out. He was just doing what I asked of him. Of course it's you. I glared over my shoulder. What do you want? My eyes drifted automatically to the 2 unfamiliar men behind Alice. Their dark auburn hair a stark contrast against their olive skin complexion. The closer I looked at them, the more I realized that they were twins. I nodded towards them. Who are they? Don't look at them, he said dismissively. Focus on me. I glanced at Jade and Charlie and found them both gaping at the twins with equal looks of shock and amazement. The Canellit twins, Jade whispered. blushing as the one of the right turned towards her with a critical gaze. Zero emotion on his face as he glanced at her from head to toe, his gaze darkening as his hazel eyes locked on hers. I heard Jade's sharp intake of breath as she clutched my arm. "The one on the left is Encolis," she whispered, "and the one at the right is Mteo." "The butchers of Lupine Bay," Charlie whispered. Amazement in his tone. "The sons of Alessandro the Bear Canella. Beta to Air Lupine and the most fearsome warrior in all of shifter history." My head snapped back towards Atlas and the twins, my gaze narrowing as I took in the two men in a new light. Mteo slit-twitched at my friend's whispers, his gaze turning inquisitive as he took me in from head to toe too. "Why are they with Atlas?" "Because they're part of my pack," Alice answered smoothly. "Let's go." "Where are we going?" I asked, still rooted to the seat. "And what are you doing here? Don't you have class?" "I'm flattered you have my schedule memorized, little star." His lips twitched. "Now let's go." "We're going to be late." "Late for what?" He took a step forward, crowding me just enough that I was forced to either lean back and away from him or stay where I was. I chose the latter, not wanting to back down from his challenge. And it was a challenge considering the way his eyes lit up the closer his face came to mine. "I'm not above throwing you over my shoulder," he whispered, his head tilting slightly as his lips grazed the corner of my mouth. "In fact, I think I might enjoy it." "You wouldn't dare," I growled. "Not in front of all these people. And not when I'm wearing a skirt. Especially since you threw such a hissy fit last time." "I did not throw a hissy," he scowled as he backed away, giving me much-needed space. "The Penta has called an emergency meeting regarding some recent matter that has just arose. We better get going before we're punished for making them late." I stood and followed him, sending my friends a look of goodbye. When I turned back to the three men in front of me, it was the first time I noticed that the entire cafeteria was quietly gawking at us. I caught up to Atlas's long strides. "Always causing a scene," I murmured to him. "I thought you were the mysterious one at like to blend in when we first met." "Blending in for those ashamed of who they are or where they come from." He glanced down at me. "I am not ashamed of either of those things." He opened the door that led to the outside seating and strode ahead, leaving me staring at his retreating form. I felt a hulking presence draw closer to me, making me feel both unnerved and at ease. "Riddle me this," I asked, keeping my gaze straight ahead and locked on the self-assured air. "If your father was beta to mine, then what the hell are you doing in Atlas' pack?" A moment of silence. "It's hard to stay in a pack that wants nothing to do with you," the gruff one. "And Colas, I think, said they don't care how long your father dedicated his life to the pack or what he gave up to protect them. They only cared about removing the two children they deemed misfits from their presence. I didn't have to see them to know that they were communicating silently with each other. There were no more Lupinus to protect." Mteo added softly. "Also another reason for us to not overstay our welcome." I sucked in a sharp breath. "But that was your pack." "That was our father's pack," one of them said, correcting me politely. "It was never ours." I glanced over my shoulder at them, and while their faces held no emotion, I could tell by their words that they were deeply affected by what the Lupine pack did them. "So you went to Atlas' pack?" "Our mother was originally from the Lobo pack." Mteo sent a sad smile my way. "And when she was widowed after our father died, but to small boys in unfamiliar territory, their Lobo's pack welcomed her back with open arms." "Assholes," I muttered to myself, turning to face forward once again, shame staining my cheeks. Apparently, I'd have a pack full of assholes. How exciting for me. One of them chuckled while the other stated, "People fear what they can't control." They wouldn't be able to control us either. They were right, of course. Encolis, a smirk apparent in his voice. "No one will ever control the butchers of Lupine Bay." "Enco." Mteo snapped at his twin. "Don't sound so smug and from an air." "Why the butchers?" I asked, ignoring their little argument. "Have you guys really killed that many people?" Mteo stuttered a little. "Our name doesn't come from our body count." "What does that?" My eyes wide as I snapped my head to look at them once more. "Holy shit. You're telling me you to really chop people up for a living?" Silence. 25 feet ahead. Atlas finally realized he was the only one walking towards the meeting. He spun and barked at us. "What the hell are you three doing over there?" "Playing charades," I deadpanned. "What do you think we're doing?" "I know what you're not doing." he yelled, and that's walking that fine ass over to me. The twins started forward, but I stopped them with the back of my hands to each of their chests. They looked down at me simultaneously, every bit the twins they were, and waited for what I was going to say. I struggled for the right words. Genuine words that I instinctually knew that these two killers at my side needed to hear. I know my words mean absolutely nothing to you right now. Especially since you do not know me or my character, I began softly, but know that it'll correct the wrongs that you have suffered at the hands of others. I may not have known Lupine well, but I know that he wouldn't have wanted a pack he cared for so much throw out to smart and talented wolves that probably meant a lot to him. I glanced at each of them and was surprised to find them staring down at me with unknown emotions in their eyes. Why? Colas coughed, clearing his throat once like you said. You don't know us and we don't know you. Why would you go through that trouble for something that happened 20-something years ago? Why wouldn't I? I frowned. I might not have known Wolf Lupine, but I know that he wouldn't have stood for bullying or tyranny in his pack, especially when it came to children. They just glanced at each other, once again using that 21 new twins shared, before glancing at me again. This time, the expressions they wore were so fierce that I took a step back. What? My gaze bounced from one twin to the other. Why are you looking at me like that? Even more silence. I was about to snap at them, wondering what the hell they were looking at, when a hand slithered its way around my waist and pulled me into a strong chest. I'm not getting in trouble for you, Starry Atlas whispered in my ear, squeezing my hip once as he guided me forward one step at a time. I don't want to hear Nix why bitch at me all day for being late. Nix why? Phoenix. He could cast and his nickname for our dear old grumpy ass. Nuh on my lips twitched. He does not let you call him that. He does. Atlas snickered. I'm pretty sure he won't mind if you called him that to him. I chuckled. I just find it so ironic. Why is that? My friends back home call me NYZ. I smiled at him, thinking about Samara and Lily and the last time we saw each other, you know, because of my middle name. NYZ, he repeated my nickname, the sound rolling around his tongue, and making it sound like it was the sexiest name in the world. I like it. It's fitting for you, little starlight. I rolled my eyes and opened my mouth to snark at him when I was suddenly thrown backwards, hard enough that I lost all breath in my lungs. I landed on the twins with a oomph, watching as a blur of movement ran towards us at an alarming speed. What the fuck is that? Chapter 3 for Nova. What the fuck is that? The creature in front of us was something I've never seen before, and judging from the way both twins were gawking at it, I'm pretty sure they never saw something like this thing before. It looked like a wolf, with its features and fur, but at the same time looked like a decaying humanoid corpse. Part of its skull was and ribs were discernible from where I was standing, so noticeable in fact that I saw brain and organs protruding from their respectable cavities. Blood was matted in his fur, and while his crimson eyes were bouncing between the four of us, I couldn't help but notice that its eyes were focused solely on me. Oh shit. That Calden had been a good sign. With a deafening shriek that had my ears ringing, the creature ran toward us at lightning speed, somehow dodging Atlas' attempt to block him. Get her out of here, Atlas roared, transforming into his wolf as he dug his paws into the ground and sprinted towards the terrifying creature. The twins, who were already yanking me out of the trajectory of the beast, gripped each of my arms and hauled me towards the direction of the council building. What the hell is that? I screamed when I heard Atlas howl of pain, turning my head to find his shoulder locked in that thing's jaw. The creature locked eyes with me as it bit down on Atlas' shoulder, tearing it even more aggressively as he jerked his head from side to side. The sickening crunch of bone and shredding of muscles met my ears, making me want to cry and hurl at the same time. Help him, I screamed as I tried to yank my arms out of the twins' grasp. For fuck's sake, forget me and help him. They winced as they dragged me away from Atlas and the creature, their eyes constantly shifting between me, the fight in behind us, and the open perimeter surrounding us. Those aren't our orders, Lupine, they said simultaneously. Alpha ordered us to get you to safety. Another howl of pain that made me physically ill to the point when my heart was clawing out of my chest in panic. You can't seriously think you'll leave him behind. I growled at them. You need to help your alpha. Please. Nicholas. Please. Mateo. He needs help before that thing kills him. Antio looked between me and his brother with anguish in his eyes. And Cole is cursed before shoving me completely into his brother's arms, get her to the penta and send the guards. Whatever this creature is, it's not nor natural. It shouldn't be overpowering an alpha, let alone heir, the way that it is. The moment we burst into the council's meeting, a meeting that happened to be ongoing my triad, a dozen set of scowls were sent my way. You're late. Atlas needs help. I cut off foul with the scathing look. We were attacked on the way over here. My two heirs stiffened at the parent's side. What? Phoenix barked, stalking towards me with a ferocious look in his stormy eyes. Tell me what happened. While Mto quickly explained what happened to everyone else in the room. I gripped the front of Phoenix's shirt, drawing those unique eyes back to mine. You have to help him, Nixa whispered so low that I was surprised he heard me from the uproar of everyone in the room. That thing, whatever the hell it was, injured at Atlas. Before Mto dragged me here, the last thing I heard was Atlas' howls of pain. His expression turned thunderous as he barked out orders to all the guards in the room. Cassie and he snapped at the other heir, gripping my arm gentle but firm in his large hand as he walked me over to Cassie. Know what to do. With those final words, he and Teo strode out of the room, shifting into their wolves as they exited the Penta building. Cassian's gentle touch brought my attention to him and those around us, or therefore, the lack of people around us. We were the only ones left in the room. Where did everyone go? I asked as Cassian gripped my hand in his, leading towards the Penta Council chairs. It doesn't happen often, but if a threat manages to break through the wards protecting our world, we have special protocols in place, he explained softly. This thumb brushing small calming circles on the back of my hand. The older heirs get whirled away by guards to their panic rooms hidden within the Penta Council. He stood behind his designated family throne and tapped on the Like Us family crest 3 times, then paused before tapping it once more. There was a small click and suddenly, the chair started shifting forward and to the left. My eyes wide, and there's a secret tunnel. He nodded, and all the heirs disappeared underneath here. He shook his head. For safety reasons, all heirs chose their own location of their panic rooms. He explained they typically only tell their beta and to trusted guards where that location is. Even the children of heirs don't actually know the location of their parents' panic room. I cocked my head to the side. You don't even know the location of your parents' panic room. Another safety protocol. He shook his head. If the kids knew the location of their panic rooms, and if somehow we were kidnapped by our enemies, they could potentially torture it out of us. I frowned. What's so important about these rooms? These rooms usually store duplicates of everything we keep at our estate offices, he explained, and since those estates are crawling with guards and security, the next best thing is to try to get access to our panic rooms. People really go through all that trouble. You'd be surprised. He held out his hand to me. Watch your step. It gets pretty steep the lower we go. Is it even safe for me to be accompanying you to your panic room? I paused. Do I have a panic room? You do, but since you just arrived, and with all the chaos going on, we haven't had time to outfit it properly. As he led me down stone steps, the little sliver of light that we did have was dwindling fast as the throne slid back into place and mixed. Atlas, and I decided that if something like this happened, you'd accompany me down here. When I almost tumbled down the stairs, he wrapped an arm tightly around his waist, guiding me the rest of the way down. Almost there. My panic room is just a few feet away. Just how many panic rooms are there? I asked as we passed door after door of what I assumed were panic rooms of the past heirs. And how far does this place go? No one really knows, he said as we stopped in front of one door, but considering the original Penta chose this exact that it used to belong to an underground pack of nomads, I'd say this place goes back pretty far and has rooms that we probably still don't even know about. A buzzing sound filled the room before another click was heard. The metal door that I knew was added within the last 10 years. If the technology it housed was anything to go by, and I was surprised to see that it led to a tiny, white hallway. This is the panic room. My nose scrunched. It's different than what I expected. No, he laughed. Nudging me inside the room, my beta reinforced the room and included this little hallway as a buffer from the enemy. From the inside of my room, I could literally disintegrate enemies with laser beams. Laser beams. My eyes wide, and you don't seriously have those, do you? No, he snickered. I'm just joking. You should see your face right now. I choked out a laugh, punching his shoulder gently as he placed his palm onto another surface. A small tablet popped up from behind the panel closest to the entrance just as the wall behind us slammed shut. Your name, Alpha, the robotic voice announced. Cassie M. Lycos. Your full name, please, the voice repeated. He looked over his shoulder at me and groaned. Any chance you could close your ears? I frowned. Close my ears. The last time I was here, I forgot that my beta upgraded our tech. He grumbled. One that requires voice and tone recognition. It asks questions only it'd be able to know, like what my full name is. Understanding dawned on me as I felt my mood perk up slight. I'm finally going to get to know the infamous first name of the Lycos heir. I grinned at him. He groaned and looked back towards the tablet, who apparently was waiting patiently for us. Your name, please, Alpha. Nos Cassie and Constantinians Lycos. Cassian whispered, looking over his shoulder at me. The white wall in front of us clicked and Cassian opened it wide enough for us to walk through. I looked at him with a raised brow. Nos Cassie and Constantinians Lycos. I butchered the pronunciation as I tried to recreate his name, rolling the different cadence on my tongue. Dean, he muttered. It translates to Dean in English. Dean's a pretty normal name. I shot him a confused look. Why are you embarrassed to use it? Because if you knew the backstory behind why my mother chose it, you'd be mortified. Like I am. He locked the door behind us, hitting buttons on the second tablet inside, and activating the panic room's alarm system. Okay, then I wandered farther into the room that looked more like a cozy open space loft than it did a panic room. What's the story behind your name? It's not the worst name story out there, he sighed, just embarrassing. Long story short is that Mom named me after one of her favorite characters on those human shows about to monster hunting brothers. What show are you? My eyes widened when I realized the exact show he was talking about. I love that show. Mom was obsessed with it too, which was ironic considering she was a shifter. He went so obsessed, in fact, that she named her only son after one of the characters. Dean, I surmised with a grin. How fitting. How so? He asked, curiosity lighting his tone. You've never seen the show. My mouth dropped open. Why not? Would you want to see the show that your mother Fangler ed over a character so hard that she named her firstborn after? He scowled. It's weird. I think it's cute. I pinched his cheek. And technically, you're kind of named after the characters. What? The character you're named after? My lips twitched. Has a best friend named Cass. And you know, your name is Cass too. So he groaned. Are you messing with me? Nope, I grinned. Look it up if you don't believe me. He didn't, then cursed when he realized I was telling the truth. This is what you get when you make fictional men so damn attractive and alluring. I smiled. Fictional men aside, I sat down on the soft sofa tucked against the wall. Can I ask you a question? He nodded. Why are you down here with me instead of up there helping Phoenix with Atlas? The curse of being the lone heir. He gave me a wistful look. Since I have no siblings, or spares as the elders like to call them, and forced to hide in here while my best friends are out there fighting some horrible creature. I was about to say something else when my eye flicked up to the screen above the door unconsciously, the one that held for vantage point views from the differently placed cameras on the outside. I jumped off the couch. What the fuck is that? Chapter 35. Phoenix. I huffed out a breath, wiping the blood out of my eyes, as I took in the bodies surrounding me. That creature, whatever the fuck it was, killed more than half our guards and injured the rest. I watched as the injured were getting checked out by the campus healers while the dead were being carried away by the royal guards that could still walk. Bury them in the guards' crypt, I ordered them. That's the least they deserve for their service today. Yes, Alpha. A rattled groan from beside me had my eyes snapping to him, his mangled body looking like it was pushed through a meat grinder before getting run over by an 18-wheel. You're one lucky bastard. I dropped to my knees to stanch the flow of blood from his abdominal wound. How the fuck you survived? This is beyond me. He laughed, the sound turning into a wheeze as more and more blood poured from his wounds. And how the fuck you still look like a male model while being covered from head to toe in blood is mind-boggling, he croaked fucking Fenrir S. Well, mind-boggling, I called for a healer. That's a big word for a lobo that failed kindergarten, first, and fourth grade. Shut up, he grunted when the healer took over. Starting with the wound that was currently coating my hands in blood, it was my fault and you know it. I chuckled, glad that he was alive and talking to me. But on the inside I was anxious. He was losing too much blood. His normally tanned skin looked pale and his skin was cold to the touch. How's Nova? He croaked out to that thing. Chef Fine, I reassured him. One of the butcher twins got her to us in time. And the other. I looked over my shoulder at the other twin who was currently growling at the shaky healer who was trying to mend a particular gruesome wound running across his chest. Still alive, I shook my head. There must be something in that Lobo pack water because you bastards don't die. When he didn't reply to my snarky comment, my head immediately snapped back to look at him. His eyes were closed and his breathing was uneven, but he was still alive. Why isn't he healed yet? I snapped at the healer who trembled slightly. Alpha. His wounds are deep, the witch said, and for some reason. All I could do is manage and redirect his blood to vital organs so they don't start to fail him. My magic isn't working on our Lobo. What? I barked. Why the fuck not? I don't know, he stuttered. I've never experienced something like this before. I called for more healers, demanding that they put all their effort into saving Atlas. Are the others stable? I asked one of the head healers. Stable enough to at least heal our Lobo. Most are air. Fenrir, she rushed out quickly, wiping her bloody palms on her soiled, blood-stained dress. I managed to call in more healers, but there's a limited amount of us as there is, and our magic can only last for so long. At least 10 witches surrounded Atlas now, their hands and eyes glowing as they pushed their powers into my friend's frail body. If only Atlas could see himself now, to know that the very people he disliked were fighting to save his life. He would have a fucking fit. A fact that I would definitely not let him forget when he was better. Do you know what's causing this? I asked, softening my voice in order to minimize the prying ears surrounding us. The older witch shook her head, her frazzled gray hair bouncing slightly in the wind as she glanced at the dead creature a few feet away. My guess, she said just as soft as I spoke, it has something to do with that thing. I glanced at the creature. Do you know what that is? Her hesitation had me looking back at her. You know what this is, don't you? Her flinch of fear had me automatically gripping her arms. If you know what this is, by Lupine law and the Miger Coven emendation that you are mandated to notify. I've lived in the community a long time, Alpha. She ripped her arms out of my grip. I know all the laws we witches have to abide to like the back of my hand. My entire coven, I have to constantly refer back to them in fear that we might break one that has you lot throwing us out. I didn't mean it like. Yes, you did, she said, waving her hand in the air, but I'm used to it. I'm sorry, I apologized, realizing that if I managed to piss off the one which that the others looked up to. Atlas was as good as dead. I'm worried about my fellow heir. An heir and Alpha I've known for a long time and whose pack doesn't deserve for him to die. Her eyes widened as she took a small step backwards, her shock very obvious at my words. I get it. I really did. Heirs. Let alone Fenrir heirs. Don't apologize to those society deems as less desirable or those who had to power our society. And since our healers were witches that were outcasted from their own covens, many wolves saw them as the lowest of the low in our society. I don't know what it is, she said softly, drawing my thoughts back to the conversation at hand, but I heard stories. What stories? The Darklanders, she whispered. The Dark Vice Avages. I reared my head back in shock. You believe that? That thing is one of those fabled creatures. I can't be for sure, she eyed me, but from what the stories mention, it fits those for descriptions. That's just it, I said. They're tales that are passed from one generation to another in order to scare the pups away from causing trouble. You should know more than anyone that those stories have some truth swept into them, she murmured to that Alpha heir. Lobo hasn't found his mate yet. My head snapped to hers. What does that have to do with anything? She looked at me, most likely started by my desperate tone. What does having a mate have to do with Atlas? It doesn't happen often, but it is said that sometimes mated pairs can heal each other in a way that healers can't. She looked at me in confusion. The intrinsic bond that forged the moment mates meet allow them to comfort, if not heal, each other in moments of pain or anguish. How does it work? I don't know, she said. I've personally never seen it been done before. Then how do you know it's a real thing? I growled, and not another fable. Our book's alpha air Fenrir. She narrowed her eyes at me. Well, I've never seen it been done before. That doesn't mean that someone has. It's documented in our text dating back a few couple decades. My heart started pounding as an idea formulated in my head. It was risky. So fucking risky, considering that I didn't know if what she was talking about was actually true. I've never heard any situation where mates were able to heal each other. Albeit I've never really looked into the matter before, considering that I always believed that my mate never existed and I would likely be forced to marry someone out of duty to my pack. However, if what she was saying was real, if mates could heal each other better than healers, then our little star would be the solution to our pressing life or death situation. Where's Amethyst? I asked the healer, whose frown of confusion grew tenfold. She was in the med wing, if I recall. The healer said, making tonics and special wound dressings for the guards coming in. Summon her, I ordered, and quickly. Alpha Fenrir. We are perfectly capable of caring for. I do not doubt you or your coven's abilities, I interrupted her, but I do need someone I am familiar with tending to Alpha Air Lobo swoons around the clock. Is he safe to travel? Travel. She clucked her tongue, an incredulous tone mingling with her words. You want to move him? Is he stable enough to move? She looked over at him, and while there were still healers working on him, the once sizable group dwindled significantly. Exhaustion was starting to creep on the healers, and we both knew that within the next hour, all of their magic would be depleted. He took a lot of damage, she said, more damage than a normal shifter body should have took. We managed to stop the bleeding and heal some of the more superficial wounds, but the larger ones have yet to mend back together. Is he safe to move? I repeated. A short distance. She glanced at me. Possibly as far as the medical wing if I use some of my students, but no farther than that. The Penta building was much closer than the med wing, but I didn't tell her that. An Amethyst. Am here. The familiar stout-statured woman appeared beside me, her fair hair glinting in the sun. What is it that I can help with, Fenrir? You're dismissed, I told the healer, who immediately took off to join the others working on Atlas. You need to come with me. Where are we going? Curiosity lit her tone as she followed me a few feet away from the chaos. Do you have a silent stone on you? Of course I do. She fished in her waist-long apron and held up the small pebble proudly in her small hand. I always carry one on me in case little Ian stops by the wing for a chat. Cassie Ann, or little Ian as she fondly referred to, might have grumbled and blushed at her name for him, even though we all knew that he loved it when his pseudo-mom called him by the childhood nickname she came up with when she raised him. Once the stone was tucked tightly in the middle of her palm, I dropped a bomb on her. I need you to tell me where Cassian's room is. You know where his room is? She blinked at me. You live in the same house as he does. We both know that that's not the room I'm talking about. She sucked in a sharp breath. How did you? Cass, though he was such a genius to bypass the Penta's rules. I raised an eyebrow by only telling his beta about the panic room, which left him the right to tell one more person about the panic room, a person that should have been his third or most trusted guard and not his former witchy nanny. She raised her chin in defiance. I'd rather die before I betray the sweet boy's trust, and that sweet boy will most likely want to die if he finds out that one of his best friends in the world died, and that the woman he viewed as a mom had a hand in his death. She reared her head back in shock. What? Atlas is stable for right now, I told her honestly, but that won't last. We need to get him to Cassian's panic room before it's too late. You have some of the best healers in the world working on him. She quickly glanced behind us at the even smaller group of witches helping Atlas. What's so important about Cassian's panic room that could rival the magic of coven healers? I nearly smiled as the image of our beautiful little star running into the pent, a meeting like an hurricane, popped into my mind. While she may not have subconsciously known that Atlas was her mate, or that she cared for him at all, her instincts sure did. I could see it in the way that her body was slightly angled towards the door, the way she nervously wrung her hands or bounced on her feet. If no one decided to listen to her plea of help, to help someone she had grown close to. She would take it upon herself to save him instead. Cassie Ann's panic room holds its own kind of magic. If only I knew just how true that statement was. Chapter 36 Nova What the fuck is that? Cassie Ann glanced over to the security panel. Eyes widen as he jumped up and unlocked the panic room's door. Phoenix, he gasped Atlas. I jumped out of my seat and ran towards the door, trying to peek over his broad shoulders that were blocking the entrance to the room. I gasped when I saw what awaited at the door. More specifically, who stood there. Phoenix. I choked, my eyes dropping from his bloody body to the person he was carrying, who looked like he was 10 seconds away from meeting the Grim Reaper Atlas. Cassie Ann ushered them in, slamming the door shut behind them quickly before Ray engaging the panic room security system. Phoenix lowered Atlas gently onto the couch I previously occupied, his blood into the soft beige couch. My lips quivered as kneeled next to him, cataloging all of his injuries as my arms from one wound to the next. Almost automatically, my hands hovered over the largest wound on his stomach, as if they willed the blood to stop oozing from his body. That monster caused all this damage. I looked at Phoenix, who gave me a terse nod, and where is it now? Dead, he said bluntly before he managed to get maimed nearly to death. The bastard took down that creature. I only provided the distraction he needed to kill the thing. My eyes roamed over him from head to toe as he talked, my heart beating dangerously fast as I checked for any wounds he could be sporting. What I found? None. Well, no obvious ones. My eyes slid back to the man at my side. Good, I whispered, pushing back the blood-stained wisp of hair away from his forehead. How did that thing get in the academy anyway? I thought you said we were safe here. That I was safe. Silence. I didn't have to have eyes on the back of my head to know that Cassie Ann and Phoenix were giving each other secretive looks. We figuring out that now. Phoenix said I have the less psychotic butcher when working on it. A throat cleared and my head snapped over to where an older woman stood in the corner of the room, her critical gaze bouncing from me to the guys and then back once again. A small growl slid from my throat as I covered Atlas' body with my own, protecting him as much as I could from this unknown woman. Who's this? My eyes narrowed at the matronly woman, and what is she doing here? Relax, Starlight. Cassie Ann put a hand on my shoulder, squeezing gently. This was my nanny Amethyst. She used to care for me when my parents would travel the world for their research. And Shess here because Shess, a witch, he spoke softly, and a very powerful healer. She'll be able to help Atlas better down here. I eyed her, wondering just how powerful she was, considering she looked like the live-action version of Mrs. Potts. Why down here? I questioned. What? Cassie Ann gave me a confused look. What do you mean? Why does he have to be healed down here? I clarified. Why can't he go to, like, a hospital or something where he can be treated properly? I looked at his wounds more, emphasizing my point, before meeting their eyes again. He's in really bad shape, Nix, I said. Looking at the self-proclaimed leader of the group, he should be taken to someplace that can provide better care. Nova. Phoenix grabbed my hands, helping me stand and blocking the others from view. Trust us. Amethyst was the best healer in the entire academy. If anyone can heal him, it's her. He needs more support than just her. Phoenix. I whisper. He needs real doctors and nurses and testing. Things work differently here than they do in the human world, Nova, he said softly, his calloused hands drawing circles on the back of my hands. Healers are better than any human doctor or est. If anyone can save him, Amethyst can and will. But why are we healing him in the panic room? Because if anyone sees him like this, it'll leave doubts of his capabilities. That happens. Someone might get the crazy idea in their pea-sized brain to challenge him in front of their entire pack while HES at his weakest. My eyes wide, and someone would actually do that. His snort of derisive had me gaping at him. 10 summons would do that at once for the chance of a seat at the table. I glanced at Atlas, gnawing at my lip in worry. I was pissed and worried at this entire clusterfuck of a situation. The worst combination for an overthinker like me. At this rate, I was going to be an insomniac shifter with anger issues. How long will he need to be down here? He glanced at Amethyst in question. A week? Maybe longer, she supplied, her eyes sliding to me for a quick second before returning to Phoenix. Says it all depends on how well he responds to the treatment. Won't the Penta be wondering what happened to him? I asked. Won't his father or siblings want to see him? He shook his head normally. After an assassination attempt, we're all on lockdown until the threat is secured. Assassination attempt. My mouth dropped open. That's why that creature was here. To kill Atlas and me. We don't know who the intended target was. His lips pursed in until we find out who they were after. Or we're sure that another attack isn't going to occur. All Penta members are to remain in their safe rooms. Does that mean you and Atlas have to leave? The protocol would dictate that we should leave. My heart raced at his words, at the little hope that they inspired in me. And will you? I asked. Leave us, Phoenix, and will you? She asked, her icy-colored eyes blinking innocently up at me. Leave us. My heart, the one the boy said was identical to my mother's, softened at her words. I can't believe this beauty in front of me was mine. Well, of mine, but still mine nonetheless. She was trying to be strong for Atlas' sake. Hell, for all of our sakes. But I could tell from the slight tremble of her bottom lip and constant shake of her hands that this whole experience really shook her up. And I understood what she was going through. The memories shuddering through me so quick that I didn't have enough time to lock them away in that dark place where they belong. Please, Father, my 10-year-old self pleaded, pulling against the silver chains, the cuffs digging into my skin as I tried to wrench away from the biting sting of the aconite poison my father dipped them in. I don't want to do this. Quiet boy, he backhanded me so hard that I saw stars. You will do this, or else they'll go back to the house and drag your sister out of bed to make her do what you can't. The choice is yours, boy. The thought of my 6-year-old sister being forced to do this, to do what he wants in this moment, made me physically sick to my stomach. My entire body trembled. I'll do it. Stop stuttering, boy, he backhanded me again. I will not have an imbecile of a son soiling the Fenrir name. With those final words, he threw me into the arena. I could never forget the hot breath that washed across my face, the smell of death and decay permeating the air around me. I didn't have to look up to know that the red eyes of a feral were locked on me. How in the hell he managed to capture a feral and drag it here, to the Fenrir Coliseum on the Academy grounds, was mind-baffling to me. But then again, it Schulten had been surprising to me, considering that TR Fenrir was shady as hell to the point where it bordered on almost criminal. Your mother kept you weak, he sneered at me from the safety of his balcony. But tonight, I will purge you of that weakness. I will help you reach your full potential as my heir. At those words, the feral attacked, and I was forced to live through one of the worstest nights of my life at the hands of that sick bastard who enjoyed watching the innocence bleed from my soul. That night, as I looked up its satisfied face from the Coliseum floor, the chains still wrapped around the feral's broken neck, my hands stained in blood, I vowed something to the universe. I vowed that no matter what happened in my life, how twisted or sadistic I became, it used those skills he forced upon me to end his very existence. The monster he created, the one he formed with his bare hands that night, and thousands of nights thereafter, would be the one to end him. Just like how he ended my mother the moment she found out about his abuse towards his own children.